Hello, Internet. Gino, that Pinguino Grieco here again with another episode of Deep Listens, and it is part 3 of our Life is Strange podcast series.
Woo!
Woo! End of Chapter 4 into Chapter 5, and this time we're finishing it. For real, not for play. And I am joined, as always, by Billy, the melancholy prophet Rothert.
You know, I'm excited to talk about Life is Strange because I feel like this game has a lot to wrap up and it's going to be a great discussion, but I'm also way excited to get back on track with the real show because this was supposed to be a 1-week game and it turned into like a 3-part miniseries. Holy shit.
Yes, it did.
I'd say it's a bittersweet ending.
Yes, it grew. There was a lot to talk about with this game. Thankfully, on the downside, we did not sign up for this when I picked this. So, almost there. We also joined, as always, by Peter, Savory Rue Busby.
You know, I was watching my boy, Guy Fieri, this weekend, doing a lot of diners, drive-ins, and dives. And I just want to say, I don't think there's any man in the world I hate more but love to watch cook more than Guy Fieri.
Wait,
shout out to him if he's listening to the podcast.
Does he?
He has like 13 shows on the Food Network. He has Guy's Grocery Games. He's got Triple D. He's got another one where he just cooks like weird ass burgers. Like he did one with bechamel sauce.
What?
Let's dial it back, Guy Fieri. A little less.
I thought Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives was all he did. I thought it was just him roving the countryside, eating garbage food.
He does that, obviously, but he is a one-man empire.
What an empire.
I know.
The lost 6th member of Smash Mouth, Guy Fieri. And we are also joined for these special Life is Strange episodes by Noelle Precarious Sauce Grieco.
I don't understand any of the things you use for me, which is weird because you've known me the longest, therefore you should have the most material. And none of them make sense.
I just had, like, recently, Jen came up with, like, she used that when we were having dinner. Like, I had sauce, and it splashed, and she's like, that sauce is precarious. And then I was like, Precarious Sauce is my new rap name forever. But I couldn't say it for myself as my own nickname, but you're the closest relation to me. So I bestow it on you. You are Precarious Sauce.
I mean, Noelle, you spit the second hottest fire of all the Griecos, I assume.
Well,
probably true.
I've been working towards that for a really long time, so thank you, Pete.
So, you can tell.
Yes, playing the long game. And so, listeners, if you want to get in touch with the show, you can do so at Deep Listens Pod, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. I said it right this time. Hooray.
Good work. It's only been 2 years.
Yep. So, without further ado, Life is Strange. When we left off, we were on our way to a Hoppin' Vortex Club party. Just getting slammered. Gotta say, it's probably wildly irresponsible for the teacher to allow, for the teachers, the principals, for everyone involved to allow that party to happen the way it does.
Can we just sort of establish, is this a college or a high school?
It's a high school.
It's a high school, but only senior year.
And they're throwing these parties with the teachers present?
And in the school pool.
What's
apparently.
going on here?
With alcohol.
Or, like,
no, only alcohol for the cool kids.
People have shakers.
Only cool kids drink alcohol.
They have mixers, which, if it's all soda, I don't know what they're mixing. Maybe it's like they're making daiquiris and virgin pina coladas like every bar mitzvah I've ever been to.
Badass Shirley Temples, maybe?
Yeah.
No, but then it's going to, like, fizz out. That wouldn't be good.
I don't
when
know.
you mix actual alcoholic drinks, you put in the fizzy stuff later.
I know, but
flat.
Pro tip.
The only other thing they could be doing is like mixing juices or mixing sodas and shaking shaking that.
You're just making some amazing fruit punch.
Yeah, this is artisanal fruit punch. It is in Oregon, right? Or Washington
Yeah.
They're
State.
clearly
it's in
all
Oregon,
hipsters.
so
People just drunk on wheatgrass.
Just trashed. Well, to be fair, it seems like there is a just burgeoning drug empire operating out of their beaches, so you can just get whatever you want, apparently.
That's a good point.
Just mix some of those in there.
So
That's why they needed to what's it called?
To blend?
Yeah.
Yes. I don't understand, but the mechanics of this party are not the most alarming thing that's happening at it. When you start out at the party, there are 2 moons.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's pretty bad. And I love that the kids are just too smashed to care, I guess. They look up, they're like, whoa, am I drunk, or are there 2 moons in the sky?
Both.
It could be 2 things.
And Warren was both.
Yeah.
Yep.
He shows up and has a drunk selfie with Max because he's drunk and lonely.
He is both of those things.
And they never end up going to the movies.
They don't.
They didn't.
They never get to go.
I felt pretty bad about it.
They never get to go ape.
Though
He wanted to so bad, though.
you can set up another good date at this point in the game. Important to note. If you can convince, I think Daniel is his name, to come to the Vortex party, then I think if Brooke is also there, then they set up like a nerd date.
Aw.
And they go to I think it's a Hayao Miyazaki convention.
Of course they do.
Hold on, let me just fact check that real quick. Yeah, you can get Daniel to come to the Vortex Club, and then if you do, yeah, Daniel and Brooke will go to a Miyazaki like expo or something like that.
Does that happen even if Brooke is trying to date Warren?
Yeah. Brooke seems slightly uninterested in the whole situation, but she's like, well, I kind of want to go to this thing, but I guess I have to go with him.
Which one's Brooke?
Okay. Brooke is Drone Girl.
Drone Girl, got it, okay.
And Daniel was dude who made good sketches, I think?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you're, like, did anyone not kind of go out with Warren, like, make plans with Warren?
I made plans with
Warren,
I did, yeah.
Okay, everyone made plans with Warren. So I was going to ask if the scene with Max asking for, like, a selfie, if that's a little bit more awkward if you're not kind of down with Warren.
I mean, it was still pretty awkward.
Yeah, it's still pretty awkward, but at least there's an understanding that you kind of are okay with him if you're going to the movies with him versus him being dejected and wandering up to you drunk and asking you for a picture anyway.
But Warren seems like the kind of kid who would keep that torch burning, too, you know?
Yes.
I don't think he'd give up hope.
Didn't I told you how to make a pipe bomb, Max.
That's love.
You owe me this picture. Hashtag nice guy. So when you eventually, Chloe is on the warpath. She just kind of vanishes to try and find Nathan. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of have to make your way through the party. Everyone's either fake drunk or actual drunk. It's unclear. There's a lot of great, like, I would say NFL Blitz style people in the pool. If you look at them, they're like the crowd in NFL Blitz. They're just
where it's just in the background.
Yeah, they're like black background characters. They are all flat 2D GIFs that are animating poorly, which I appreciate.
Basically. Now, I just have one story point I think we might have forgotten that's kind of important. Between when we had that like alternate reality Chloe in a wheelchair thing and the Vortex party, didn't they go somewhere and discover some other stuff at like a Prescott place?
That's where they find the information about where Rachel is buried, and then they go find Rachel, and then they go straight to the party.
Talk about that. So make sure that we actually hit that point. It makes them essentially point the finger at Nathan more because they think that it was all a Prescott thing and not just like a coincidence.
Yeah, they don't think it was a coincidental murder. They think they found the guy. So you can basically end a lot of plot points with all the different characters at the party. Who was your favorite classmate in the party atmosphere?
My favorite classmate in general is Dana.
Yeah, Dana was pretty good at the party.
I liked there was that one guy in like the corner. I think he had a backwards hat on. We didn't really want to be there. I was like, what a weird coincidence, bro. I don't want to be here either. I like that guy.
I was honestly running a fever during this scene, so I don't really remember.
Good call. Also a good call. I like saving Alyssa again from like getting knocked into the pool.
Alyssa needs to stop.
Stop existing.
Just stop doing things. Just stay in a room at all times. Maybe with Max next to her.
I feel like you can't tell a character in a game to stop existing where they're so sensitive about, like suicide. Well, you're like hyper insensitive.
That's Kate.
It's fine. It's fine.
Alyssa is the one that just keeps getting hit by things.
I mean, we do erase a lot of people probably with time travel anyway.
We do.
Yeah.
And Alyssa, the universe is out for her almost as much as it's out for Chloe, but it's just out to embarrass Alyssa.
Just makes her really uncomfortable.
Just make her life slightly worse at all turns.
Yeah, just like she seems fine. She seems like a fine person, but the universe is like, what if she just had a shitty day? An embarrassing shitty day.
The one person that I think should have figured out that Max had like random powers was Alyssa.
Yeah, she does eventually.
How is she just like randomly saving her constantly?
I don't know. She kind of figures some. I mean, she says you're like my guardian angel at some point, but
yeah, but she's not like, oh, by the way, like how in the world do you keep knowing that I'm gonna be like hit by things or whatever, and just randomly tell me to move?
Yeah.
And also, why does she listen?
Because look,
like, hey, do you mind moving a little bit to the left? No, I'm fine right where I am. Thanks so much.
After it pays off the first and second time, I feel like at that point you just go with it.
Yeah, but I feel like I wouldn't do it the first or second time.
That's fair. I think the best party goers are two random NPCs whose names I don't even know. There's a dude with a pool noodle who's just hitting another dude with a pool noodle in the face just over and over again. And they will do that forever. And I feel
just stare at them for like 10 minutes.
That is their hell now.
Yes, that is their hell. That's where they exist forever. They only ever get one dude, just all he exists to do is get hit in the face with a pool noodle. I wanted to rewind time and help him, but I couldn't.
Can't help everybody.
No, can't save everybody.
Only Alyssa.
Only Alyssa and sometimes Chloe.
Sometimes Chloe.
So you walk through the party, you have to get past a bouncer, because apparently this school is so fucking stratified that they have a bouncer and a VIP section in this high school party.
Which, again, inexplicably, it's worth mentioning, is on school property.
Yep. It's on school property. There are teachers there.
That's where they're announcing the winner of the Everyday Heroes competition.
Hashtag
because,
Everyday Heroes. Dude
where
with
normal
the pool noodle.
things happen.
Pool noodle. Everyday hero. Take a picture of him. Yeah, you get into the back with the VIP section, and then you have to meet the shitty Vortex Club people for the most part. Yep. And then you get to have a heart-to-heart with Victoria. At least for me, it was a heart-to-heart. I don't know if it has to be a heart-to-heart.
Well, I think all of us were nice to Victoria early on, too.
Yeah, so I think it worked out for all of us.
Yeah, we had a little cred with her.
Did everyone convinced her?
Yeah.
Convinced her to do what?
To, like, look out for Nathan because he's sketchy?
Yeah, so... we'll hit on this. We're not going to be able to avoid a spoiler really here.
No, it's spoilers we're talking about the end of the game. Listeners, we're spoiling literally everything.
At this point, if you warn Victoria, she ends up dying.
What?
Yeah?
No.
Pretty sure?
No.
Hang on.
But she ends up
drugged and like.
Oh, sorry.
Out.
I mean, she dies sometimes.
Let me make sure I get this right. I have all the tech, all like the.
I wish it was tech trees. They're decision trees. But I would love to upgrade Max's like speech.
She's got like psi powers.
Oh,
like strength.
She gets her psi merit badge. She starts levitating.
She's better melee damage.
Yes.
Okay, so there is a path that she does get murdered for this.
What?
Yeah.
How?
So you
Probably
guys
a gun.
warned Victoria,
Advice.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did she actually believe you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or did she kind of blow you off?
She
I
believed
should
me.
believe this.
So what I
You're nice to her.
see here is there's 3 choices. You warn her or you don't warn her, and then if you warn her about the dark room stuff, she could either believe you or not believe you. And if she doesn't believe you, then she doesn't get murdered. But if she does believe you, she's going to go to Jefferson for help.
Ah.
Classic Jefferson.
She's going to try to like seek asylum with Jefferson, and that ends up getting her killed in that circumstance.
Okay.
Oh, I mean, I saw her all tied up, but I didn't see her get killed.
She gets killed in one. Like at some point, she does get killed.
Oh.
But then you like reverse time so many times that I'm really unsure who dies and who lives.
Yeah, and that's something I was starting to notice
That's
here.
what I mean to say is people that know bad shit happens to her, but if you warn her and she believes you, then like lots of bad shit happens to her, up to and possibly including getting murdered.
Oh, wow.
At minimum, she gets drugged and tied up and stuff, but like,
So it
I'm
turns
pretty
out
sure
the good
she
thing
gets
to
murdered.
do, the good thing to do is just to say fuck off Victoria. Just to
That's
be mean to her the whole
counterintuitive.
time. So just be mean to your enemies. Don't try to befriend them.
And then
Well,
they
I
won't
kinda wanna
die.
examine
You could save their
a
life.
little bit. I kind of want to examine this mechanically a little bit, because what we had done, I like this design choice because we have been given an option, multiple options along the way of the game, where we can be either a dick to Victoria or like try to be amicable and friendly towards Victoria. And most of the time, it seems like when you are making these choices, it's pretty clear which way it is. It's like the very first one, comfort Victoria, or like take a picture of her misery. It's like it's pretty easy to know which one you want to do if you want to be friends with Victoria or not. And this one is just very strictly backwards. Try to be a good friend and warn her, she ends up killed. Be a dick to her, she lives. You know, so I like that as a design choice, that the devs probably said, look, we don't want at this phase of the game you to just be scripting your responses by what you think you're already setting yourself up for. They like forced a scenario where we didn't actually know what was going to happen with our choices, so we couldn't just plan ahead for everything. Like, I guess it's a reminder that in this game, choices do matter, even if maybe you don't see the consequences right now.
Yeah, it's at least a little bit of divergence from generally if you make the choice that you feel is morally right, things turn out a little bit better. This one, even if you make the choice that's morally right, you actually can make things worse. So once you basically, Jefferson gives out an award. He gives Victoria the award for the Everyday Heroes contest, and then you get a text from Nathan saying Rachel's body is going to be gone, and the cops will never find her. So
and all the evidence will be gone.
Yes. So you and Chloe run back to the dump. You run back to where Rachel's body is, and she's still there. But then you get jabbed in the neck with a needle, and Chloe draws a gun and gets shot in the face.
Yep.
And Jefferson did it.
Dun dun dun.
No way.
What a dick.
Can you jab somebody in the neck with a needle like that?
I mean, I guess if you're really skilled at jabbing people with needles, I don't know.
He seems to be very well versed in it.
He's practiced.
So maybe the first couple of times it didn't go as well, but now he knows just the right spot.
Yep. Now he's good at it. I don't know, but
good at drugging and taking pictures of young women in.
It was like hypodermics don't respond well to like pressure from side to side. Like they're kind of brittle if you kind of bend them. So if a person gets jabbed in the neck with a needle and you like turn, like what the fuck was that? Like it could just break like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of an unrealistic thing in the movies. You get jabbed in the neck and you're just like, frozen solid while someone injects something into your neck. If you turn and go like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like it'll either break or come out. Like that's you got to be still to get a shot, basically.
I feel like in a game full of time travel, that is the least of your problems with causality. But at least they explain why Max can't just rewind that. She's drugged and it stops her powers, basically. And did anyone not see Jefferson being an asshole coming? I
thought
him
he
being
was
a jerk.
Sketchy, but I didn't know how sketchy.
Yeah, I didn't think trapping teenage girls in a basement sketchy.
Yeah, I didn't go that far.
Yeah, kind of a dick.
Sleeping with his students. That was totally within the realm of sketchy. I would not have fingered him for being the murderer.
Yeah, when he gives the speech...
technically, he wasn't a murderer until that night. Because he didn't actually kill Rachel. Nathan killed Rachel.
Though he did try to drive Kate to suicide.
That is one thing that he did. That would be accurate. But also, he didn't technically kill anyone until he killed Nathan that night. Yeah. Spoiler alert, he killed Nathan that night.
Yeah. And
yeah.
Go ahead, Pete.
Well, I was trying to remember who killed Rachel. But
Nathan
was like, I want to be like you and do the type of art, quote unquote, that you do. And he tried with Rachel, but I think Rachel fought back.
Yeah.
And then he ended up killing her.
Yeah.
You know how that accidentally happens sometimes?
I thought he just used too much. I thought he just used too much of the drug, whatever the drug is. And
I don't
overdosed
know if he
her.
used too much or if she then tried to fight back and then something happened.
I think because Jefferson at least says that he overdosed her. I don't know what the impetus was.
Yeah.
But when Jefferson gave his speech at the beginning of the game talking about how he could take any one of you and capture you in a vulnerable moment of weakness and frame you forever or whatever his line is, I was like, that's ominous. That's a real ominous thing for a teacher to say in a lecture to a student.
I mean, then again, this whole school is pretty sketchy to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just there were a bunch of gamey things that kind of made me think something might be wrong with him, and it was mostly when you can point a finger at Nathan or David or him, and it made me think there's no good reason to point a finger at him. Though you can say, oh, he talked to Kate last, but it made me think just this is the replay option because he's really the problem. And so if you're replaying the game, you pick this choice. And so they make the choice available, was what I thought. Is like this is a replayability choice. But here we are. He's a murderer. He's a creepy murderer.
Yep.
You wake up. You wake up at the beginning of episode 5 in a chair in the dark room getting weird pictures taken of you. With Victoria, for all of us, I think Victoria unconscious next to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then
Well, actually, when you wake up the first time, he's not taking pictures. He's already gone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And you just see the pictures, and then you go back to the moment when the picture was taken.
Right.
You jump back to the moment where he gives his creepy evil dude monologue about what he's been doing.
As all creepy evil dudes do.
Yeah. They just love monologuing.
Way into it.
That's not so absurd for creepy dudes, because if you really think about what a creepy villain is all about, it's doing something very, very different than society normally allows, and having to justify to themselves and to the world usually why it's not absurd to be doing this. So captive audience that he can rationalize his thoughts to, it's actually makes a lot of goddamn sense.
Yeah. I don't know.
As a person who likes to podium and talk a lot, if I were a villain, I would definitely monologue.
I mean, should we be a little concerned after that comment?
Yeah, he's dancing a slippery slope here. A lot of ifs and maybes getting bandied about.
Yep, there's a lot of... Look, if someone was going to tie up an 18-year-old and then take a bunch of creepy pictures, I don't know who it would be, but... Who's to say? So the this moment, there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on with this moment. One is this was the moment when you're in the chair and you start using pictures to jump back and forth in time and like go back even further and alter things to try and set yourself free. This was the moment when I just stopped kind of caring about the moment-to-moment choices I was making, because I knew
the game became Chrono Trigger at that point.
Yeah, it basically became Chrono Trigger. It became the moving between timelines and rewriting timelines was such a key mechanic, and it was happening more and more frequently, that I figured that every choice I make in the moment could be overwritten, and probably would be by the time I get to the end of the game. So I stopped giving weight to individual choices. When, you had that alternate timeline with Chloe, that was an alternate, at least in accordance to what our main, quote-unquote, main timeline is, the one that you keep returning to. That one, that spoke felt like whatever choice I make at the end of that, I'm not going to return to this timeline. She actually Max rips up the picture so you can't return and make a different choice there. So at that point, I just knew that, whatever choices I make here feels authentic, and it feels like the ending of a authentic story. In this moment, there's a lot of just jumping back to earlier in that night, jumping back to even earlier in the week eventually, and so I just couldn't care about some of the choices that you make from then on, unfortunately. Did anyone else feel the same way, kind of in this situation?
Yeah, because you run into that problem. Sorry, Billy, I'll just finish this thought. You run into that problem where, again, you can't really have a main timeline because they're all equally valid. But that's sort of what this game wants to posit. That, like, all right, we're trying to do things that affect this timeline as opposed to creating alternate ones that we can then live in and explore more fully, let's say, in their own right. Because the other problem is you can never return to the timeline you are actually on. That timeline no longer exists. So you're not really returning to it. You're just creating another one that more closely approximates it.
Yeah, but for me, since it started feeling like a series of different vignettes, like each timeline was almost a vignette unto itself, where a single choice could either be authentic to that timeline, could either feel authentic for the moment, or you kind of having this long game, like what's the right thing to do if this is the choice that sticks and then carries forward, for the reality that the Max we're controlling kind of exists in. It just made it so that each of the choices, instead of worrying about the consequences long term, I was making a lot more decisions based on what I felt in the moment should happen. So when you get situations where like violence might come up later on, I didn't care if someone was going to necessarily get hurt, or I just made choices based on what felt good at the time, because I felt like this moment, this one act is all I get. The consequences might not matter anymore. Mm. Whereas this game kind of plays off of consequence being something you need to constantly keep in mind. And I felt like at this point, all consequences are out the window. And the other thing that comes up in this sequence is the Catcher in the Rye references in this game come full circle.
God damn it.
Yep.
A piece of shit book.
Pete, if you want to talk some smack about Salinger, feel free.
He was a recluse. He also has there were some very weird relationships he was having, which resulted in sort of competing biographies being written of him that are either like Salinger was a genius, and also Salinger was kind of an asshole.
Isn't that most writers?
Yeah, but I think like Salinger was an asshole in sort of a different way. Like Fitzgerald might have been
a special kind of asshole.
Yeah, like Fitzgerald might have been. Hemingway had his problems, but like Salinger's just there's not a lot to redeem him with.
I mean, he did write The Catcher in the Rye, so
yeah, piece of shit book.
What's going to redeem him? But there's clearly a bunch of references to The Catcher in the Rye, and I actually seeked out an article that's on Clip-Through called "Life is Strange: The Catcher in Arcadia Bay." which the article kind of unpacks several of the Catcher in the Rye kind of overlaps, but sorry, Pete, that I didn't name it.
That's fine. The title is what it is.
The writer probably didn't title it either. That's probably an editor's call, but obviously there's the Max Caulfield, Holden Caulfield. There's the poster in Max's room that looks like a Catcher in the Rye.
Out of all the books, why?
So I think this is the moment where it becomes really explicit. The teacher wants to catch kids in the moment they become adults and kind of freeze them there. And his way of doing it is drugging them and taking pictures of them in their most vulnerable state. And it's kind of this perverted, messed up version of Holden Caulfield, where Holden's trying to like stop kids from growing up just by it's a daydream, basically. It's not a thing he's actually trying to execute on. But Mr. Jefferson is actively doing it either by killing kids or drugging them and taking pictures of them.
Well, there's also that moment too where I think it was Holden's teacher tries to get him drunk and sexually assault him.
Yeah.
Pretty direct parallel there.
Yeah, that too. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's the thing that happens.
I forgot about that part. Yep. And also, I think the parallel with Max is kind of interesting. This is something the article doesn't go into, but I just noticed that Max feels like a kind of reverse catcher in Holden's estimation. Like, Holden is trying to stop kids from growing up, but Max is using her powers explicitly to make sure that Chloe gets a chance to grow up, which I think is it's a pretty interesting inversion. Max is kind of this more adult figure in Chloe's life who kind of re-enters at this point where all of her kind of mistakes through childhood are finally catching up with her. And Max, by using her powers to alter time and space, kind of allows this person who should have died due to all of her, kind of some of her personality flaws, some of her mistakes, and some of the terrible things that have happened to her. She should not survive, but Max is there to kind of exert this power to make sure she gets to have a future in spots. So I thought it was a nice parallel between the main character and then the nemesis. You got this dark inversion of the main character. Yeah, one person rewinding time just to make sure that the timelines move forward. One person trying to stop time.
It also raises a question of what would have happened if Holden had had a friend.
Yeah,
Max has Chloe. Like they're a unit, right? In whatever way in whatever way they end up being a unit, I guess, depending on how you play the game. But Holden's completely on his own. Like there's really nobody else. And you sort of.
Does he have a little sister or something?
he does.
Yeah, but she's not really there.
Yeah, but
right?
she's there for a little bit.
Yeah, for a little while she's around.
He mostly just wanders around and has internal monologues and looks down on people. Judges.
So just as sort of the thing I was talking about. So Holden, it's his English teacher, Mr. Antolini. And Holden wakes up and his English teacher is patting him on the head. In a way that
right.
It's a little.
That's creepy.
He says the word he uses is flitty, which is, I assume, a derogatory term for sort of homosexual.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Sounds like a thing Holden would say.
Yep.
So
Classical.
there's unpacking a little bit of Catcher in the Rye references. And let's I guess get back to the plot off of that little detour. So you go back in time here and there. You set yourself free, like a little bit freer. You mess up some folders so that pictures are available to you. And you eventually get to rewind time to the beginning of the game. And you get to start the day over again with full knowledge. And you get to completely undo everything bad that happened, pretty much. You can talk to Kate and reassure her that everything's okay and that you love her. You can tell off Mr. Jefferson. You can tip off David that something's wrong, and you give him all the information he needs to catch Mr. Jefferson. And then you actually end up, I guess, setting into motion submitting your own picture. Do you submit the picture, or do you set into motion taking the picture that you end up submitting?
No, you already have the picture before the game starts. Like,
right.
You're looking at it and you're like, oh no, it's not good enough. I can't do this. And then I think when you're telling off Mr. Jefferson, you like hand it to him. I think. I might be incorrect.
Yeah.
Again, I was running a fever.
Yes, yeah, that's what happens. And him being the creep that he is, he wants you to win because he thinks that means he's going to take you.
Time.
Yeah, he wants alone time. So you end up winning the contest. But when you jump back into the present, you've won the contest. You're on a plane to San Francisco. Mr. Jefferson's in jail. Everything works out great. Turns out you're a great photographer, according to everyone.
All the artists love you.
Yes. You have to go to a pretentious art show where people just blow smoke up your butt, and your teacher gets slammered and eats free food. Your principal.
Mm-hmm.
But then it turns out that all of the events that you set into motion that day still kind of come to fruition. The gigantic storm is still going to happen. The paranormal stuff is still playing out regardless. And Chloe's in that town.
And so this is where I think we should diverge or leave from our catcher discussion and jump into another one of my favorite stories, Donnie Darko.
Oh, Donnie Darko.
Cellar Door.
Cellar Door, yeah. That film essentially looked at time travel as like a natural imbalance. And it's interesting that they use a storm as the countermeasure for this. Because
in Donnie Darko or in
Life is Strange.
Okay.
In Life is Strange.
Yeah.
Because fellow nature lover and weird nature fact enthusiast, Pete, wouldn't you agree that in many cases, any kind of like tropical depression or storm is in many cases the result of like a storm in many cases results as an imbalance in nature, and that's how it uses like to correct something.
I would say gradient, not imbalance, but I guess I'm splitting hairs.
Sure. Then I'll say it's like storms are reactionary to one change happening. And this is not pointing to like the butterfly effect as we traditionally know it, as butterfly flaps its wings, storm across the world happens. I'm speaking strictly like meteorologically. There's some kind of cause and effect of a nature event occurs, in response, storm might happen. In this case, some abnormal event, the creation or development of Max's time travel ability results in an imbalance. A storm is going to be used to correct it or in some way remedy this.
No,
you're just saying no?
Just straight no.
All right. I'm only trying to draw a parallel.
You can keep going, but I'm going to make an argument later
no?
that there's no causal relationship between Max's time travel powers themselves and the eventual storm. That's not the way this plays out.
All right. Well, then,
I mean,
I'm just going to finish the analogy then,
sure.
Which is it's specifically the case in the Donnie Darko film that Donnie has the choice to close the loop, basically, and that stops all the bad things from happening, but it results in him dying. And
when a jet engine falls on his room.
Right, when a jet engine falls through his bedroom and would have killed him in the beginning of the movie, but he has to close his loop by essentially being there, and he dies at the film, but everything else that would have happened that was terrible doesn't happen. Something very similar choices presented to Max here, that Max can go back and essentially say, all right, I can go back to the start of that day, but not mess with anything, essentially let Chloe get killed by Nathan, or you can have the tornado rip through Arcadia Bay.
I mean,
well, this
you're
is also
jumping
skipping
past
ahead.
you're jumping past a lot of stuff.
I'm only trying to draw the
connection.
analogy right now between the Donnie Darko stuff and the Life is Strange stuff, because this is the moment in the game where I realized that particular comparison.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that this is the moment where... And you have to make this choice that you're going to have this cushy San Francisco experience, getting all the artistic, merits accolades that you believe you deserve, but you have to sacrifice that because Chloe is worth more. And it's not the town. It's Chloe is worth more.
It's just Chloe.
Yeah. At least at this point, yes.
And so you go back, you don't turn in your picture, which apparently not turning in your picture causes Mr. Jefferson to not get caught. And then you end up in the chair again, and he takes all your stuff away. So you can't use that escape route again.
Mm.
But then everything just goes all wonky.
Yeah, then David finds you. He uses his super detective skills and his deep paranoia to find you after Mr. Jefferson gives you a bunch of monologues again.
As he does.
As he does. I'm going to capture your innocence, but sit still. Stop moving. You're messing up my shot.
Yeah,
I'll just give you more drugs, don't worry.
I'm catching your natural beauty, but don't you fucking move.
He gets very aggressive very quickly.
He does. He goes full psychopath, real 0 to 100 real quick. And David saves you. You get, I think that's the most action sequence moment in the whole game, right? David and the million different ways he can die.
Yeah. I mean, maybe when you shoot drug dealer beach guy.
I mean, but that's more just like the...
Yeah, for you, it's just a nice conversation.
It was just a nice conversation where we recognized everyone's mutual humanity.
I killed him and then stabbed him when I didn't want to kill him. So, I guess we experienced that a little differently.
Yeah.
I thought you meant the first time. I was like, the gun doesn't even go off. What are you talking about?
No.
We had a nice discussion about our mutual humanity and then parted as friends.
Nope.
He's bleeding now.
That's for chumps.
Well, once you actually, once David comes in, the different crazy, sequences you can have, you have to alert him so that he knows, and Mr. Jefferson's like, how did you know what's happening? Yeah. And then you have to command him on how to get through the fight. Apparently there's a way to have David leave that fight without a scar, and I don't know how you do it. I guess you...
I did it, I think.
How?
I don't remember.
you have to pull...
Had a fever.
You have to pull the cord.
That's you have to pull the cord, and he, falls, and then...
Oh, immediately?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because he gets distracted because the light is about to fall, because, priorities. And so he gets distracted by it falling and breaking, and then
David just gets him.
David's able to do it.
Pretty much.
Okay. Yeah, I pulled the light, but after David got clocked in the head. So
that was dumb.
So
shouldn't have done that.
You're not very helpful, are you?
It was a lot dumber when I kept telling David, throw thing at him. Shot.
Use the water bottle.
Shot. Run at him. Shot.
I don't know why he listens to Max over and over again.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
See, this again. Same with Alyssa. Why are you listening to her? But whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. David was in kill mode. He was listening to orders. He's a trained soldier.
Took over.
But that's a pretty cool sequence, I think. And the choice with David after he takes down Mr. Jefferson was the moment where I was like, okay, I'm just going to make choices based on how they feel in this moment, because this moment might not be quote unquote canon.
Yeah.
It might not last very long.
Yeah.
You can either tell David that Mr. Jefferson killed Chloe or not. I decided to tell him because fuck Mr. Jefferson, and I felt like David could use a boost.
I told him at first, just because I wanted to watch Mr. Jefferson die. And then I went back in time.
Really learned something about myself in that moment.
But yeah, then I went back and didn't let him kill him because I figured that would result in David having jail time. And I felt like David didn't deserve it.
I told him because I didn't think I could not tell him, you know? Like if I
Like
told
morally, or you
Yeah,
kind
like
of
I was like, okay, that's too far to reach. No, like I felt like if I told him like she didn't, or if I didn't tell her, that would be dishonest. And then if he found out later, it'd be worse.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah,
I don't know. I also just felt like I was gonna fix it regardless, so this
Yeah.
wouldn't matter.
Yeah, let's be real. I mean, Chloe wasn't gonna stay dead. at
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't think Chloe would stay dead, and I figured, worst comes to worst, this storm is wiping this place out.
point. That's what we should.
Who cares?
Listen, David, you're going to die soon anyway. Fine.
It's fine. Just he was gonna die too. It was all gonna be okay. Cleansing wins. Yeah, but I knew that however the game was going to end, it wasn't going to end with Chloe dying like that.
No.
So that sequence would never stand. And Billy is indisposed, so I'm going to assume that he probably... We've established that Billy, he just kills fools to see them die. So
Billy would have been fine
Just
with it.
like Johnny Cash.
yeah, Mr. Jefferson's probably dead in Billy's universe. So once you escape, you drive into town. Town is going nuts. There are whales everywhere.
Tornadoes.
Tornadoes, fire.
A lot of people dying that you can hear but can't find. That was distressing.
And then some people who you can find and save.
Yep.
I did not save dude with side buzz and a good portfolio. I think Evan is his name. I didn't know that he was there, and I guess you can save him from like a collapsing sign. So he died.
But again,
Yeah, I didn't save Alyssa,
I saved
and
Alyssa.
I didn't know that that was an option. I didn't find Alyssa. I didn't run into her.
What?
But then later on, she was like, "You let me die," and I was like, "I let what?" I was not aware of this.
I mean, I saved some people on the way, like if I explicitly passed them. But again, like we're traveling to the diner for the expressed purpose of turning back time.
That's
So I
very
mean,
true.
really, what's the point?
Yeah, but I felt like I had to save that fisherman.
That one guy.
Yeah, he was an alright
Yeah.
dude.
He was tweaking, but I felt like I needed to save him.
There's the one guy you electrocute too.
That's
Yes,
the fisherman.
that's the fisherman. You
Oh,
can
that's the
choose
fisherman?
you
Yeah.
can choose to not electrocute him.
Oh, I assumed you
No.
had to flip the switch regardless.
Yeah, you have to, and then you go in, and then you undo it, and then you have to flip.
To hell
Did
with
you
it.
just let him fry?
I was like, yeah, he's dead.
Yeah, you
killed
can-
him.
You can rewind in there while he's freaking
Nope.
out.
Didn't even
like-
occur to me. I was like, oh right, those time travel powers. I still have those.
Yeah, you can rewind it so he doesn't have to die. Okay, he's
Yeah.
dead. You can
He's
also
dead.
save a trucker. I didn't save the trucker.
I saved the trucker. I saved everyone, I think, but Alyssa.
I only saved Alyssa and the fisherman.
Yeah, I didn't save anybody.
Because Alyssa was saved enough times.
And then Alyssa
I've
saves
done
you.
stuff for her. Oh,
If
really?
you save her, she saves you.
Whatever.
A sign's gonna fall on you, and she pushes you out of the way.
No, my time travel powers saved me. So take that.
Yeah.
That'd be way cooler if you then rewind, and then when Alyssa tries to push you out the way, you just like jujitsu her into the sign.
You just sidestep and it crushes her.
The longest con. I ushered you through this world. I take you out of it. And so you make your way to the two whales. There's all of the characters who you
Yeah,
haven't had a
everybody.
last speech with.
Yeah.
They're all there. You get to talk to Warren. You get to talk to Frank. And you get... Well, maybe you didn't get to talk to Frank.
Because he was dead.
No, he was only stabbed. He made it.
Okay.
And he didn't even
Are you
mention the
sure?
stabbing. He was pretty cool about it.
Really?
Yeah, he's a nice guy about the whole thing.
I know you stabbed me, but like we're chill now. It's cool.
That dude freaking rolls with the punches, I gotta say.
Good guy.
And the stats. Both of those things.
I mean,
Really good dude.
other than dealing all those drugs and threatening you with knives and guns and dogs, other than that, he's a pretty
Yeah.
upstanding guy.
Good guy.
He did rescue that dog, guys.
He did.
He did.
Number one redeeming quality.
But you do get to see Warren
Yes.
You do.
and potentially make out with him.
You can. Did you tell Frank that Rachel was dead?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we all told him.
Yeah. I mean, I had to be consistent. After I told David that Chloe was dead, I was just telling everybody. I tried to tell him that I murdered that fisherman, too. I was like, by the way, I just cooked a fisherman. That wasn't one of my dialogue options.
Odd.
Yeah, right.
Billy, you're back? Okay. Question: did you have David kill Mr. Jefferson, or did you let him live?
No, he did the investigation thing.
No. I mean, when you had the choice to tell David whether Chloe was dead or alive, what did you tell him?
Oh, no, he didn't kill. He didn't kill Jefferson.
Oh, you lied to him about his dead daughter.
I love how when I did it, it wasn't that serious.
Yeah.
But now that Billy did it, it's like says something about his character.
Nah, I just like that the listeners get to know that I predicted he would kill Mr. Jefferson just to see him die, and now that Billy made the other choice,
who me?
No, it's fine. Yeah, don't worry about it.
Couldn't be.
The listeners will
then
know.
Who? Billy? Did you make out with Warren at the diner?
I don't remember. Maybe
you
I
don't
missed that
remember
interaction?
if you kissed Warren?
The love of your life?
I don't remember.
It wasn't a full make out. Like, it was a little demure. There were people around, but
I mean, you pretty much like peck him like on the lips. Like,
well, they zoomed in. Like, it was a whole thing.
What?
Oh no, I think we did an awkward hug.
Okay.
I didn't know that was an option.
I said, was that explicitly what it said?
It was an awkward
like,
hug.
you can awkwardly hug one.
No,
because I was
everything.
I was invested in the
walk away awkwardly hug.
I was trying to groom the relationship of Max and Chloe after that point.
Yeah.
So I was trying specifically not to lead Warren on, like to be an asshole.
I kissed Warren.
I kissed Warren also.
I kissed Warren too because my Max was sexually confused about what she wanted.
I feel like in my head, Max was bisexual, but
yeah, in my head she was too.
Chloe, I think, is an extremely selfish person, and pretty much has been playing with Max for a lot of the time while still kind of being in love with Rachel. And I feel like Warren has been there for Max since like the very beginning.
She would have to make a pipe bomb.
Yeah, exactly. That's
blood in, blood out.
Really.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my Max was hetero. She was into Warren. Just the decision I made.
Yeah, my Max was bi and was not sure which way to go, so I figured Warren. Everyone gets a kiss. Everyone gets a kiss.
It's for everyone. You get a kiss, and you get a kiss. Everybody here gets a kiss. No.
Yeah, if I learned anything from Jade Empire, it's that playing both sides of these relationships sometimes ends in a weird threesome. So,
I mean, this might be sort of whatever. I'm going to say whatever it is. So I just felt like they didn't need to create a romantic relationship between Max and Chloe.
I agree.
I saw it there. I saw that Chloe was interested in Max either for herself or as some sort of weird substitute for Rachel. But I was just like, you know what? I'm going to keep this as a friendship relationship. There aren't enough of those sort of like deep, interesting, involved, incredible friendship relationships, I feel. Even when you have sort of two female characters, it still has to become a romantic plot as opposed to a friendship one.
Yeah, but there's also a dearth of like young female fiction about kind of a sexual, potentially gay awakening.
100%.
So, kind of any way you play this game, you're going to get a really unique story.
Yeah.
So I don't mind that it's an option, and for me, I think if I was to play this game again, I would just go all in on the Chloe Max relationship because I think that's the most interesting story this game can tell.
Yeah, by no means do I think it's an excellent ending in its own right. It's an interesting ending. It's an atypical ending for all the best reasons, but I just liked the other one better from its atypicality standpoint.
Yep. That is
honestly, fair. If there was an option for Max and Kate to be in a relationship, I would go for that way more than Max and Chloe.
Do you think Kate would be in for that?
I mean, I feel like Even though she's like super religious, I think she's more progressive. I think she
My version of Kate was. She's
My
got a rabbit.
version of Kate.
How bad could she be?
I think that's kind of wishful thinking on. That'd be a too much character development for one 5-day cycle. For Kate.
I mean, she just had like a suicide attempt. I'm pretty sure that really shakes up someone's character.
I don't know, like,
I don't know if you guys know this, but that's not real. Doesn't really go with Catholicism. So I have a feeling that she's not all that
Catholic.
She is.
Yeah,
she's Catholic.
I think so.
She's very Christian.
She's very Christian.
She's definitely some sort of Christian.
Subset of Christianity is going to super front on suicide.
She reads the Bible a little bit too closely to be Catholic.
That's true.
Like, us Catholics don't really read the Bible all that much.
No, a lot of forgiveness. A lot of stuff about forgiveness.
I was interested too in the Victoria Chloe relationship that we got a very brief, not real glimpse of.
Yeah,
I think that would have been an interesting avenue to pursue.
Yeah, once you decide whether to make out with Warren or give him an awkward hug or give him nothing.
Literally
Stab
just
him
leave.
as well. I stab all my problems.
Hey, Frank, is that knife still in you? Thanks. Shank. Bye. You go back in time to try to save Chloe. You go back to
as per usual.
Yeah, but you go back to before the party. You basically ride out the whole craziness. Chloe doesn't get shot. You end up busting Jefferson, and when you wake back up, you're heading towards the lighthouse with Chloe. But then on the way to the lighthouse, you have this long, crazy dream, either a dream sequence or a time going all crazy. I don't even know what it is.
Some sort of distortion of reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wake up at the beginning of that day again, and like birds start flying into the window, and Kate's desk. I guess if you save her, her desk is covered in like "I want to die." If you don't save her, her desk is covered in blood.
Yep.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That escalated quickly.
There's scribbles on the desk, and it like talks mess about Max, and you can find pictures of Max in the dark room. Mr. Jefferson asks you some questions, and all of the dialogue choices are you talking shit about yourself.
Or just talking lovingly to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you walk through the dorm, and you have to like navigate different dorm rooms.
Which is actually an extremely meta moment, because she was like, I wouldn't say any of those things. But, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a meta moment. Then going through the dorm room is kind of a meta moment. You are in Rachel's clothes one time you're Victoria. And so you kind of have this other crazy out-of-body experience. You eventually end up in this weird stealth sequence that isn't great.
No.
You have to avoid Mr. Jefferson and Nathan.
That's very bad.
Lots of selfie puns happening.
Warren's there. He's there too.
Yeah, Warren's there. He wants to go ape.
He wants to go ape all the time. And Frank's there without the stab wound.
Yep. Does he say something like, "You stabbed me," if you stabbed him?
No.
No.
I'd say he's chill. He doesn't mention it. He just plays it off.
Just another knife wound.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
Just another Thursday. Mr. Jefferson has his great, "The dark room is the only place where I can be my selfie" line. That's pretty good. Is there anything else in the dream sequence earlier that I missed? I don't think that...
When does stuff start going backwards?
Yeah, that happens when you, I think, leave your dorm room. Yeah. You end up in the hallway, and things are moving backwards from the beginning sequence of the game until you find a deer that leads you into the bathroom.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool.
See, I wish the game... I thought this sort of overall breakdown, except for that piece of shit stealth sequence, and some of those sort of weird time distortions that come after the things we're talking about explicitly here, I feel like these were some of sort of the most interesting parts of the game, where the relationship to time isn't strictly linear and reversal, right? Like you have sort of these competing possibilities, things are working differently, you're not really sure what's real or what isn't. In that way, I felt one of the more interesting textual parallels I found was not so much with Catcher in the Rye. It's a short story by Philip K. Is it Philip K. Dick? Let me look up the author. But it's a short story, Martian Time Slip.
Yeah, it's Philip K. Dick.
That's Philip K. Dick, yeah. And Martian Time Slip is all about, there's this boy who has schizophrenia, and he might have autism as well. Or he might not even be schizophrenic. It's never really clear in the story. It's never really made explicit sort of what's going on with him. But he has a different relationship with time, such that he sees all of time unfolding as one. Like he sort of sees his future. And it's about how he can sort of live, how he can grow up knowing exactly where he's heading and exactly how bleak his future is. And I felt like the game could have done a lot more with sort of those larger questions of what's your relationship to time now that you know it's not just unfolding linearly. And it does have some good questions, right? Where it's asked like, all right, what happens when you know you can't save everybody? What happens when you know bad things are going to happen? But I don't know. When you read it with Martian Time Slip, I think you just see sort of what can happen when you look at this time relationship even more fluidly.
Yeah, and I think that one of the just driving motivators behind Max is her relentless optimism that she can, by using her powers judiciously, make net positive changes or save everyone. At least up until this point, she doesn't seem to abandon hope that if she just uses her powers a little bit better next time, she can make everything turn out okay. It's not until the end of this sequence that I think she has an acceptance moment.
Also, sorry, we missed something. When you're talking to Warren before you make out with his face, he tells you about like the fact that the storm is potentially your fault.
Yeah, he gives some chaos theory. I think he mentions chaos theory, but yeah, he tells how like a sequence, because you tell him about your powers, and then he mentions how like a crazy little thing could change everything and cause this storm.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, good catch. And there's also that sequence where you meet yourself in the diner, and you meet everyone who would die if the storm hits, and you, like, this other Max is just sick of your bullshit and basically tells you, like, you're going to sacrifice everyone for this girl. Who the hell are you? Like, to make these choices, you suck. And there's this awesome silhouette at the end of the stealth sequence. I forget if the diner is before the stealth sequences or after, but there's this awesome section where you kind of walk through all of the different moments you had with Chloe, and they're actually snapshotted, like the models are frozen in time, and I thought that was just a really cool way to condense their friendship into a short moment.
Yeah. But again, like all this cool sort of time distortion is really relegated to an admittedly very cool sequence, but, and also a very short one.
Yeah, and ultimately it's all just leading up to the big choice. You arrive at the lighthouse. Oh, go ahead, Noelle.
No, I was also disappointed that there wasn't really much reflection on Max's part when witnessing all the scenes unfold. She just kind of watches them and you move on, but there's no like reflection as to how the character feels about reliving these moments or anything like that.
Yeah, she seems to just be going, this is all a bad dream, instead of analyzing them any deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, you run into sort of another ontological dilemma where really some of these events never happened. I guess they happened for Max, but it's sort of a weird squishy area.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and say, before we discuss the ending, I'm just going to call ISO on Pete. We're going to call an ISO. We're going to clear out the side about chaos theory and time, because I want to end on the discussion of
on the decision
finale.
So, well, in order to make that my claim, I'm sort of have to say what the decision is, right? So you have to make this choice. You can either save Chloe, which causes the storm to wipe out the town, or you can let Chloe die in that bathroom,
at the very beginning.
Right? Yeah, Nate can shoot her, and then the storm sort of goes away, right? And the rationale for this is chaos theory, right? So there's some sort of weird idea that the universe wants Chloe dead, right? Like she dies in the bathroom, but you don't save her. She could die during the like shooting sequence where a ricochet kills her. She can get trapped in the train station, the train tracks, and the train can run over her. And it all becomes sort of, she get killed by the like dog or Frank or something too, I think.
She can get killed. She gets killed in, well, she will die one way or another in the alternate timeline.
Yeah.
With the car accident.
Yeah. It's all very sort of Final Destination-y.
Yeah.
As if
kinda.
like the universe has some sort of master plan such that Chloe has to die, which is garbage because the universe doesn't work that way. As far as I know, look, let me caveat that. As far as I know, the universe doesn't work that way. But it all leads in this sort of chaos theory situation where Chloe living somehow causes the storm, right? And it's explicitly Chloe living in that bathroom scene that causes the storm, right? So a couple problems with this. One, the point about chaos theory is that small microscopic changes in initial conditions can cascade throughout to cause like big variances, right? So the point about it is it's unpredictable. So there's no way to know that it's Chloe living that causes the storm. It could be any number of microscopic changes in these initial conditions. So the idea that they could somehow decide that if I let Chloe die, that's the one thing, the only thing that'll save the storm, I think is problematic to begin with. The other thing is, even for chaos theory to work, there has to be some sort of causal connection. I don't really see how Chloe living could have a causal connection that could cascade so precipitously that it creates a basically city-destroying tornado in a few days. So we have that sort of problem to begin with. And then again, we have these sort of time travel dilemmas where there could be any number of other changes, other moves Max could make beyond Chloe dying that could prove just as efficacious in eliminating the tornado.
Well,
So just
sorry. Isn't it
so
more?
I'm angry.
Okay, but isn't it more that she's messing with time, and it's just that's where her messing with time began, and that's why she needs to change that moment, rather than it being that specific moment that causes everything. It's more her tampering with time that causes everything.
Yeah, I think that's what they like. Once she changes some sequence, this game definitely exists. It exists with rules that there is a true timeline. All the other timelines are variations on that true timeline. If you screw with time, every timeline where she has messed with something, she's gone back to a moment and changed something from how it happened, quote unquote, originally, it ends in that storm. So,
but then you have the same sort of causal dilemma. So regardless of any change she makes, if she makes a single change to the timeline, the inevitable and only result is a tornado?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's big and flashy.
Those are shitty rules. Those rules don't make any sense.
The reason... So now I guess I want to discuss some of the choices, because that's kind of like the final choices. The final choice is what kind of leads to my reading of the events and why I don't take such umbrage with it.
Okay. So, I'm full of umbrage.
Yeah. When you arrive at the top of the light, like at the lighthouse, you explain to Chloe like what's going on and that the storm is your fault probably, and that saving Chloe.
Because Warren said so, and he seems really smart.
I mean, he made a pipe bomb for you over the phone. He texted you pipe bomb instructions.
This is true. He's must
at least
know.
a firebug. He's at least a firebug, but you basically you explain to Chloe that you think it's your fault, and maybe going back and not saving her in the first place will save everyone else. And Chloe, in the way that she kind of demonstrated in the alternate universe where she's kind of where she's paralyzed, she puts her parents and the other people in town kind of above her own survival, and says, you know, my parents don't deserve to die in a fucking diner. My mom doesn't deserve to die in a fucking diner. Those people don't deserve to die. Like, please choose to go back. And then you're kind of given the choice whether you want to save the town or save Chloe. And So what did everyone choose?
I saved Chloe.
I let Chloe die.
I let Chloe die too.
I saved Chloe.
Terrible.
Uh-oh.
You're bad
Let's
people.
fight.
So if you choose to let Chloe go and you have gone all in on the relationship, they like kiss before in front of the storm in this really dramatic way.
Yep.
And then you go back and
Gross.
sacrifice her. Do they make out, Billy, if you are all in on Chloe and choose to save her?
I actually don't think I got enough points in Chloe relationship. Like I was trying to get Chloe relationship, but I got sort of like a
Another awkward hug.
no.
You just have awkward hugs.
Just all
no
over.
like I
think they do still kiss.
I got a Chloe kiss, but it wasn't like they weren't like mauling each other. Like
It didn't seem
No,
passionate
it's
enough
just
to you.
oh, I thought you
No,
got a
that's
different
all I
outcome
mean.
than me.
No, they just have
No,
sex.
Oh no.
It was
Okay,
bang
yeah.
right there
Then
by
we,
the White
then we got
House.
the same outcome. Sorry.
No, I was just saying that I did not, because I actually went back and redid it, because once you finish the game, you get the choice to see both options. And the first time my rationale, well, why doesn't everyone else explain their rationales first? Because I'm going to have some more thing. Why did you pick what you picked?
I can go. So I chose to pick Chloe because honestly, like I wanted to take an opportunity to pick like a really selfish romantic choice as the player when I know that me in that situation wouldn't have been able to do that. So I kind of put a little bit of myself into the choice. Like I would never be able to make this choice this way if I were actually in this position. So let me experience what it would be like to do this. Plus I had already put some gameplay choices into the Chloe relationship. I felt like I was swayed into this by a little bit of my gameplay choices, but also from my person, what would I really do, and say I'm gonna take an opportunity to do something different for once.
Cool. Pete?
I mean, in my mind, there was never really much of a choice. It was one girl who, admittedly, as Max, I love in whatever form that love took. But to waste sort of one person's life against an entire town, it seemed fairly obvious to me. But the other thing I thought is, what's going to happen? Suppose you pick Chloe. What's the relationship going to be like afterwards? Like when Chloe knows that you allowed her parents, you allowed everybody else to die to save her. Like, would she resent you for letting her mother die when she asked you not to? Could your relationship withstand? Let me finish my series of hypotheticals. Could your relationship sustain that sort of devotion? I guess, like her knowing that she's your life, like she's all of it in this one moment, such that you'd allow all these people to die. And I don't know, none of that really played into my decision, but they were just questions I found myself having.
Yeah, I mean, at least in that moment, she says, if you choose her, like, I'm never leaving you, basically.
Chloe or Max?
Chloe says that to
Yeah.
Max.
Yeah, but I mean, what are they? They're 19,
The perfect age.
right? Like, you know your whole life by the time you're 19. You know exactly what you're going to want.
Yep. They clearly know they're making great decisions.
Yeah.
Life-changing decisions.
Yeah.
Noelle, why did you make your...
Sorry. I mean, pretty much the same as Pete. Like, I didn't think that one girl's life equated to everyone else's in that town. And I feel like you work so hard to save everyone that as Max, I don't think I would have been okay with letting everyone else die, no matter how much I loved Chloe.
Mm-hmm.
Because you work so hard to keep people from both dying and just sadness in general, that I feel like it would have been selfish on my part and not true to the character if I chose to save Chloe. And also, I just don't feel like the Chloe relationship even. One, I agree that like I don't think it would have withstanded the fact that Max gave up an entire town for Chloe. I don't think that would have boded well for their future of their relationship.
Like what? I was like, what happens if they have like a fight later on? Like Chloe forgets to buy his milk or something. Max is like, I sacrificed a town for you, damn it. Like, you can buy
there's
milk.
no way you equate that like in a relationship. There's no way that Chloe can do anything to be on even ground with Max.
Yeah, whenever that happens, whenever that fight happens, Max goes into her photo album and she's just like,
Which one should I rewind to?
This picture sure is interesting, Chloe. Remember the day you could have died? Wonder if that happened.
Could have died.
Wonder what could happen if I was to go back there.
But yeah, a relationship isn't surviving that.
I think it's assumed that you lose time travel powers after these events.
I don't think that's assumed.
Not canon.
Well, it's not in the story, but I think the model that they're trying to present is that I just did some like side research on a couple of different forums and people trying to explain stuff, and the best explanation now is that it's not specifically saving Chloe that causes the natural counteractions. It's just the fact that she like allows herself into this time travel situation at all causes them, and like the resolution thereof is the destruction of the town. And I think this is more speculation that sort of just closes the loop, and maybe she would lose her abilities. We know that she can lose her abilities for other sort of unexplained reasons, but once this situation is resolved, and it could be resolved by having Chloe be alive, I think she probably wouldn't be able to just keep her time travel powers forever. That kind of doesn't make sense narratively.
Well, none of this makes sense narratively.
None of it makes sense narratively, which is why I choose to read it metaphorically.
So, now, I want to throw one more thing out.
The bastion of the lazy reader.
I just want to toss out one more of my classic analogies to some other pieces of media. You guys ever watch True Detective?
No.
Yeah.
Nope.
I know.
It's really good. What's wrong with? Actually, first season's really good. Second season.
I'm gonna talk about.
I'm gonna tell if this is a good analogy now.
I'm gonna talk about season 2.
Oh, lame.
Which you're right, not as good as season 1, but season 2 is what I need to make my point around. My biggest problem with that season of that show was that it was a 10-episode drawn-out narrative, and the punchline was that nothing fucking changed at all. Like, I watched it, and I'm not going to go around the story, but that's the most recent example of something of that kind of story happening. Was the whole punchline was that the wheel keeps turning. You didn't actually change anything. All of your efforts were in vain. And if I had chosen... What?
It's systems theory, right? Like, even your action of rebellion is already incorporated into the system.
Right. So I thought that if I had chosen to let Chloe die and revert and nothing actually changes, that I would have just then, as the player, created a kind of story that I don't like. Now, that was an analogy that, True Detective didn't have to be the one, but that was just the most recent one that I've experienced, where a story, the punchline was, hey, guess what? All of these actions that you just did, everything that just precipitated from all this stuff, it all just goes back to the same loop. Nothing actually changed at all. But in this case, we had the choice to say, wow, big fucking change happened.
Yeah.
But also, doesn't stuff... I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Noelle.
But doesn't stuff change afterwards? Like, you're still able to, get Mr. Jefferson, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're still able to do that. You still
busted,
save Kate.
Yeah.
There's still all of these positive things that happen. You just don't get to have Chloe.
Yeah.
So all these positive changes happen, just no Chloe.
So it's fine if things change in virtue of time travel, just not if Chloe survives.
I guess it's unclear whether time travel... was what allowed you to get Mr. Jefferson caught, or,
David just got really good at his job.
Oh, no. He gets busted because when Nathan shoots Chloe, Nathan gets arrested and he flips on Mr. Jefferson.
Yeah. That's
so you don't bust anyone.
Okay.
He just gets nabbed.
Okay.
But for me, so I chose to save Chloe at one because at this point I was like, I don't care. Like, none of these different sequences matter in the moment at this point. I'm so out on the long-term ramifications stuff in that moment. I was like, I just want to make the selfish choice that feels good. Just to see what happens, because I knew I was going to rewind and make the choice that I felt was more authentic. But it's also that choice that reminds me, it brought me back to, weirdly enough, Final Fantasy IX and Kuja's kind of situation.
And we're back.
Weirdly enough. But that situation, the idea of just having the power to make a choice that someone who... at this point, I started reading the game as a metaphor of Max kind of getting over her first loss. Like, it's about a young girl whose best friend basically gets killed. And the whole narrative up until this point is a counterfactual, what if you had the power to do something about it?
So she skips all the other steps. It's just bargaining and acceptance. The rest are done.
I guess.
It's just bargaining and denial, really.
Yeah,
bargaining, denial, but then acceptance at the end. Or if
unless
in Steve's case, yeah.
But it posits what if instead of accepting that your best friend died young, like what if you had the power to do something about it? That no one ever gets to have that choice. And when I was thinking of it that way, I wanted to see, like, okay, what happens if we ride this out? What do the developers, because it seemed very clear to me at this point that this game was about kind of learning to accept the loss of a loved one. At least that was my interpretation of it. And so I thought the right thing to do was, to accept that there was nothing you could do. She had to pass away. And you have to accept it, and you have to move on. But I wanted to see what the game developers would do with you saying, no, fuck that. I'd rather see the world burn than see my friend go. And that's where the FF9 thing comes back in, is just like having a character who can say, I've been dealt this shitty hand, but fuck the world, fuck everything. I just want to have my one thing, my one moment in the sun.
Gino, would there be any, I mean, your rationale is clear. I get it. But do the stakes matter? So, like, in the way you posit it, like, if it hadn't been a town, if it had been, like, all of Oregon, would it matter at that point?
So, do you mean, would anything have made me pick the other thing first?
I'm trying to sort of frame it, right? Like, it's a question of, basically, the only rationale for picking Chloe would be if the stakes made no difference, right? Like, there's no measure, it seems like, where where a decision to save Chloe would flip not to save Chloe based on the amount of people who might die. And I'm not saying this is your rationale, I'm saying if you chose to save Chloe.
Yeah, if you choose to save Chloe, I think you're saying that this Max's love for... And you can totally play this game where Max is head over heels in love with Chloe.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe Max... I think Max is more... She's not that infatuated that she can't see, the consequences of her actions or see that she's making a bad choice. But you could see a world where someone you're 100% in love with, like the lives of a bunch of even people you kind of know, like acquaintances and friends, are not worth as much as that one person to you.
No.
If someone's your whole world, what do you do? So, I mean, this also reminded me of To the Moon.
Yeah.
A whole lot. Like the idea of having this alternate universe where you got to have this long, fulfilling moment with your loved one before you pass away, rather than kind of having the relationship end the way it really ended. And so I wanted to see how that played out. And for me, making that choice out of knowing that this is the selfish choice and the one that I'm not going to stick with, I'm going to rewind and, I'm going to use the game effectively to rewind and make the real choice. I just wanted to see how the game would deal with that choice. And what happens is, Chloe, you just like drive out of the town and it's completely destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a very satisfying ending. Max seems okay. Chloe seems less okay. But you
just let her family die.
And you're just driving out of town.
Jeez.
So that's I think that's not the choice they intend you to choose. I think that if you choose to let Chloe die, that ending is one of the most incredible endings I've seen in a game. Like, in terms of just dramatic punch and tying it all together. The choice of song, again, like picking Spanish Sahara by Foles, I thought it was perfect for that scene. Kind of the slow build and just like Max, just having the scene shot from Max's perspective instead of seeing the action, just hearing the gunshot and then seeing Max crying, I thought was really impactful. And then cutting kind of to the funeral with Larry David presiding over it. Father Larry David. But it's just, as a metaphor for like accepting loss, I thought that the game works best when it's that kind of complete narrative. And again, as someone who's recently lost someone who I care a whole heck of a lot about, it hit me especially hard.
Part of it too is, I mean, if we're just sort of looking at the abstract philosophical underpinnings of it, a lot of it has to do too with the problems, and I guess you could look at it as the corresponding virtues of consequentialism or utilitarianism. You can pick your favorite one. They're both pretty much the same. But like, one of the big problems with consequentialism as a philosophical theory of ethics is that it doesn't allow any consideration of your relationship to other people. Like, you can't have any special duties towards people. You can't make any special considerations for individuals because it's just about aggregate pleasure or pain. So this is sort of, in its way, it's stacking the deck in favor of consequentialism to sort of posit it as Chloe against a whole town. But really,
and a whole town of people you know.
Yeah. But really, that's sort of what it boils down to, is how much can you take your individual relationships into account when you're weighing consequences, right? Consequentialism would suggest not at all, but that's really an untenable philosophy in its own right.
Yeah, and it definitely, I think they tweak the scales just enough to really make you think. Even though I think all of us knew that the choice that you probably should be making is sacrificing Chloe. And I think the kind of interesting thing is when you make the sacrificing Chloe choice, all of the supernatural stuff just goes away. And it just becomes the story of a young woman kind of growing up in this kind of rural town in Oregon. It becomes a regular kind of high school drama instead of this supernatural thriller. Which is kind of weird. It's an interesting thing that if you make one choice, the whole genre of the narrative kind of changes in retrospect.
I feel like it's somewhat unsatisfying, the fact that like now your entire journey just didn't happen, and the entire like relationship that you tried to build up with Chloe didn't happen, and all the choices that you like carefully made just were inconsequential. So in that realm, it was a little disappointing, but like I thought it was a good way to end it, but just from the perspective of like choosing things specifically for like reasons and like working hard to like save your friends. Are you mean to me? But yeah.
I think that Chloe, when you choose to sacrifice her, she does say, like, this time we had together was real. The feelings we have for each other are real. Just because you're going back doesn't mean this didn't happen. And
but it did.
All of a sudden...
But it didn't. Yeah, exactly.
But
like, none
Max
of it did.
does... when the blue butterfly flies and lands on Chloe's casket, Max does smile, so I guess Max at least has a memory of everything that happened.
No, but like, how do you live with that? How do you live with knowing that this entire life, or actually it's literally just a week, but this entire week of your life that like changed everything didn't happen for anyone else but you?
Or it didn't even happen for you.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying like in her mind it happened, but in actual reality it didn't.
I don't know, but I think it's probably just as bad as realizing that you condemned an entire town to ruin, and just so you could be with your girlfriend.
This is true.
Like, I don't think there's a way that Max drives away happy.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting though that in terms of sort of, I'm throwing ontology a lot around. In terms of just the status of its existence, there's no difference between Max's memories and a hallucination.
Yeah.
Which is odd.
Yeah. So really, maybe she's the most mentally ill one.
Could be, yeah.
It's all was in her head.
There's no way to tell.
And that's why I chose to kind of read it the way I did, as kind of this larger rumination on accepting the passing of someone. Because I think as a thought exercise, like all these different things you can do to, like if you had the power to do something about it, what would you do? And kind of learning, oh, maybe it won't turn out as well as my, if you laid out, you can do something relatively small and save someone you care about, which is where Max's whole adventure kind of begins, is just like, what if I stepped out from behind the stall?
Yeah.
And then everything's okay. And then it just keeps playing out further and further and further, and all the different things that keep happening because of that small change. I think it does a nice job of, even in this perfect world where you had the power to do something, things are not as rosy as you would think they would be.
It does have sort of a monkey's paw kind of vibe, where it's like, oh, you got your wish, but monkey's paw, things didn't go well.
Yep. So with that, I think we're done with Life is Strange. Finally. Final thoughts, everyone.
I had to hold my tongue a lot on the time travel stuff, mostly because...
Well, now's your chance, Billy.
Nah, like Pete has studied time travel probably as much as I have.
Traveler.
Well, we took a lot of the same classes in college. And there's a lot of problems, but it's hard to nail down a time travel model that makes sense. And I think at least this game respected a lot of the problems and fears that people have with time travel. Did the mechanics work out? Well, no. But do they ever really? Not really. I think that some of the better films or other, pop culture references of time travel where it's actually done pretty well, the characters and story have an appropriate fear and respect of messing with this kind of stuff. I think Life is Strange here demonstrated proper respect and fear for messing with time and messing with fate and trying to change the course of events, whether for selfish or, completely, benevolent means or, reasons. So aside from all the time travel stuff, I liked the development, specifically of Max and Chloe's relationship. Thought it was poignant, elegant, well made. Yeah, there were some parts of this that were kind of just a visual novel. I would have liked maybe a little more interactiveness, but this was a sort of a Telltale style game, so I knew what I was getting myself into. Don't really want to hold that stuff against Life is Strange because there was a very specific and intentional design, or I should say genre choice. This is definitely a game that I think would be better played with friends, because me making the choices myself kind of slowed down my gameplay. I felt like I had to just see every single fucking option available, and if you're passing the controller around a friend group, I think it'll just move things along better and make the group as a whole have a new perspective on the game, because it won't just be one person's actions, it'll be like the collective group's feelings.
Yeah, then you can debate what to do.
Yeah, that's kind of better. Like I was just sort of having these internal debates with myself all the time, like, oh, this choice or that choice. But if you can have a real discussion with people in the room, I think it just enhances the gameplay experience entirely. That's my takeaway from this.
You all have a finger on the trigger that shoots Frank.
Or the hand, that's Jeff.
Then you rewind just to do it again.
Also, brief
Did you
side
say
note,
Frank?
think they mentioned tornado strength was like EF6. Doesn't exist.
Of course it doesn't.
Doesn't exist.
It's a time twister.
Is there a is there a tornado severity measurement system?
Yeah, it goes like basically 0 to 5.
Oh, so like hurricanes.
5 is the highest.
So yeah, so like and also if it was a 6, there would be like topographical changes to the landscape, not just houses get knocked down. Arcadia Bay would be erased from the history books.
It would salt the earth.
It would have never existed.
Carthaga delenda est.
Pete, final thoughts?
So I like a lot of the stuff the game's doing. I like sort of a presentation of some atypical narratives, the sort of things we don't normally see in a lot of games. But maybe it's just sort of the sci-fi scholar within me and all the pedantry and fastidiousness that implies. But I just can't share a lot of the enthusiasm for the game because of the time travel elements and the way they sort of flatten all consequence for the most part. I mean, maybe the ending sort of revitalizes that a little bit. But if you get to that, then you erase a whole bunch of other stuff. I don't know. I fall into these ontological wormholes and I can't dig myself out. So I like the game, but maybe I think a lot of the enthusiasm amongst the internet cognoscenti or non-cognoscenti, I guess, depending on how it is, a little overblown.
It's fair. Noelle?
I guess speaking to what I was kind of here to speak about, which is the mental health part of it, I think they did that fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the whole storyline with Kate, first of all, I wish could have been explored more afterwards. Because while I understand that some people not let her die, but she died in some of it.
I tried.
Okay, I'm sorry. I rearranged my wording. Jesus. But I think that is an avenue that they should have spent more time on, based on the fact, and taken a little time away from the Chloe Max relationship. I feel like that could have been an option, and that would have, I think, been beneficial to, again, the mental health depression storyline of it, because it kind of went from her trying to kill herself to her being happy again, which that's not what happens. So it's up until that point, I think they got it right. And then after that point, it was just an instant oh, I'm okay now, which isn't how depression works. So that was slightly disappointing. But
just to add to that, if you don't save Kate, her storyline just ends after chapter 2, and we don't really go back to visit it quite as much. If you save Kate, there is a scene with her in the hospital, and she says, like you said, I'm kind of feeling better. Everyone cares about me. I didn't realize how much people cared about me. Which, yeah, I think it's
a nice putting it in a nice pretty bow and saying oh, okay, this thing is done. But again, that's just not how depression works. And if someone is at the point that they are literally on the side of a building trying to kill themselves, it's not a couple of people calling and saying oh, I care about you. That's not going to fix it. It's a lot of treatment. It's a lot of working on yourself. It's a lot of therapy, both medically, through medication and through talk therapy and other stuff like that. So I thought they just kind of swept that under the rug, and that was a little disappointing for me. Sorry, you were in the middle of saying something, Gino.
No, all I was going to say was, and if you don't get that kind of saccharine scene with her in the hospital, she's just dead and the story's done with her. Except to mention how she passed away and how Max was at least on the roof trying to save her. You don't really, until the final sequences in chapter 5 where, you see Kate again. Though, that sequence when you're in the hallway and she, you have to go to Kate's room and then she, walks through the door and then kind of falls to her death again.
Yeah.
Other than that, she's just kind of gone. if you don't save her.
Yeah, so
which is a shame.
Yeah, so I feel like that's a storyline that should have been explored way further than it was. I appreciate the fact that while Nathan was painted as the villain for the majority of the time, at the end, it was really shown that Mr. Jefferson kind of took advantage of him and his mental instability. And it wasn't demonizing him so much as making him yet another one of his victims. So I appreciated that change in Nathan's narrative, because once he was kind of labeled as either someone with schizophrenia or someone with bipolar disorder, I was disappointed in him being the villain. But then once again, it was shown that he was more the victim than the villain, that was a much better use of his character, I thought.
Yeah, and it's as much his father, too, is the villain. His father's neglect, his parents being terrible, and Mr. Jefferson abusing him. So he's really getting it from all sides.
Yeah, exactly.
Also
and
drugs.
no one's really actively trying to take care of him. Like, the therapist literally was like, I can't work with him because you're not helping me, to his parents.
It's not the sort of oversimplification you see a lot, where it's just like, they were born crazy, or like they fell into a vat of acid or something. Like, there's a very systemic, multi-pronged sort of impetus for this eventual psychotic episode or break.
Yeah. And he's
or if his parents were just better parents, this all would have turned out differently. It's a whole lot of things. Like, he had a problem to begin with. His parents made it worse. He's taking recreational drugs along with his prescription drugs. He's got a teacher who's abusing it. It's all bad.
A lot of people.
And he killed a lady.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
But he's very multifaceted, and I thought that was a much better use of his character than what we thought the use of his character was going to be up until the very end.
Absolutely.
And one more problem I had with it was just the storyline with Chloe when she was when she had quadriplegia, and just the fact that they put her killing herself on the table, I thought was a little ableist. And I honestly was just doing a project on ableism, and it made me think of that. And I didn't really appreciate how they kind of made it like, oh, since she has this problem, her life isn't as meaningful or worth it as if she didn't have this problem. So I think that was a slight flaw.
Noelle, I agree with you in terms of sort of the general ableism there. Do you think it would have worked out better if they'd sort of focused a little bit more on the social model of disability? Like, if they had shown a little bit more of the struggle potentially that her family had to go through because the infrastructure to support them and to support her weren't quite in place?
I definitely think so. I think it's I think if they delved into that story more and showed more of her life rather than her just saying like, oh, I'm getting worse, oh, it's hard on my family,
as
whatever.
If it were self-explanatory.
Yeah, exactly. As if it's a kind of like just like a disabled people with disabilities lives are not equated to able-bodied people's lives.
As if it needs no more explanation than that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if they spent more time in that reality and really showed the struggle that she was going through more, then I wouldn't have such issue with it. But seeing as they kind of glossed over that, and it was just, you spent a day with her and then she asked you to kill her, like, I feel like that was a problem.
Yeah, and they try to make that scene as dense as they can, but they've got one house and only so many items that you can examine and go, oh, wow, Chloe would have loved this if she could walk. Or, this medical bill wouldn't be so bad. I can't believe it. They, like, everything you look at in that house basically says Chloe's life is
worse off because she is.
it's worse off. It's worse for her parents. It's worse for, and then it's clearly leading up to this request, and I can totally see it. Like, as much as I felt Chloe's, like, the acting in that moment, I think does a whole lot of work that the narrative, because they didn't give it enough time to breathe, couldn't.
Yeah.
I think the actress who voices Chloe does a heck of a lot to convince me that that moment is more authentic than it is ableist.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I can read it both ways. Like, I think that those moments can be. I mean, that moment is really jarring. It's really fast, and the explanation, "Oh, this was the first good day I've had in a really long time. I want it to be my last day." I think it's straddling the line. I didn't know how to feel.
But also, it goes through this whole thing of like, oh, and she doesn't have any friends, and her parents are swimming in debt, and it's like all these things that they just piled on to really make her life seem like entirely negative, even though she had two parents that loved her. She had no friends, and I don't see why that had to be the case. Like, just because she was confined to a wheelchair didn't mean that she couldn't have friends. And that part of it, like the fact that Max was still her best friend after not seeing her for so many years and having gone through this huge struggle, like, that was a little ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree.
But
so this was also your first video game you've ever played on your own.
It was.
Are you going to stick around with this video game thing?
Video game nonsense? Maybe. I don't know. Because, okay, my problem is I'm not very good with the controls. So I never have been. And Gino has been trying to get me to play video games with him since I was born. So clearly it's not something that I can get used to.
It sounds like maybe Gino's just a bad teacher.
Honestly, like, random segue, when he was trying to tutor me for my SATs, he told me to do it better.
Good tip. Pro tip.
Word? You mean
Did
Gino
you do it? Did you
gives
take my
advice? Like, do better?
Yeah, like, that was the entirety of the advice, so clearly not the
No.
best teacher.
That wasn't all of it.
No.
I also told you to suck less.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Good, so hitting it from both directions. Smart.
Positive
Smart.
and negative.
You got a good cop, bad cop.
But it's all one guy.
I was trying to learn how to play
so maybe
Street
Gino
Fighter,
just sucks at this.
and Gino just said, "Hey, you know what? Punch that guy. Hey, don't get hit. Stop jumping in."
He keeps it
Stop jumping in is good advice.
Yeah,
the
that
other two
was
things
actually
less
good
good advice.
I'm really
Punch
good
that
at mashing
guy.
buttons.
Don't get hit.
But maybe more of the, like, Telltale games. Like, I've played alongside my friends Telltale games, like the Game of Thrones game, and I did The Wolf Among Us. But again, that was mostly like my friends had the controls and I was just telling them what to do.
And I think Noelle could explore games like Talos Principle, The Witness, Thomas Was Alone, like these games that are not as game demanding, like game mechanic
not as Twitch
demanding.
focused.
Yeah, they're not
as timing focused.
Yeah, maybe not Valdez Story, Abyssal City Game of the Year.
Maybe not Fury.
But perhaps Undertale.
Maybe not anything
runner-up.
he's ever picked.
Woo!
Put some other things.
Yep.
So if anyone has any suggestions of what I should play, comment below.
Yeah.
Yeah, comment below. Send in an email. Recommendations. Noelle so far has played this. She's been on the To the Moon podcast. She enjoys narrative-focused games. Give us recommendations. Send us, remember, at deeplistenspod at deeplistens.libsyn.com or send an email, deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com.
I've watched literally every Final Fantasy game because Gino's my brother. So
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yep.
And so my last thoughts on this game, this is probably the best new game I've played in a very long time. Undertale, moved me a lot. I liked Undertale a whole lot. Nothing I played last year that I hadn't already played before, I think, moved me as much as this game did. So this is I'm going to probably bring this up at Game of the Year next year when we actually record that. I really enjoyed this, and reading it as a metaphor, it was a bit of catharsis that I felt I needed, and it was nice to get that catharsis from a new game, because so often, I at least when I need a pick-me-up or when I need to re-examine something, I go back to the old staples, the things that I know will be of a high quality and I know what I'm in for, or something that I know explicitly deals with the sorts of problems that I'm thinking of, I'm ruminating on. But this game, I think it was probably good for me that I did not know all of the topics that it was going to cover going in. Like, I knew that it had a lot of acclaim, but I didn't actually know enough of the story to know where the game was going. So each of the blows hit me, with no way to really, cover up. So for me, this game worked pretty dang well, though I can admit readily, like, a series of flaws that I think could have been polished up, or changes that could have been made to make it a little bit more focused.
Mm-hmm.
But on the whole, that metaphorical reading really resonated for me. And I think that this is, if you're looking for a game, I mean, if you're listening to this, hopefully you've played it already, but it is a good game to
If
replay,
not, spoiler alert.
Yeah,
or
if
literally
not,
the entire thing.
if not, I know we described the plot in excruciating detail, but go play it anyway.
Well, I guess I should say grab some friends who haven't played it and be the friend that introduces this game to your friends.
Be there,
That'd be a
their
nice touch.
Sherpa. Yes, share it. So, till next time, thank you, Pete.
Well, do we want to announce
Oh, yes, we do.
next game?
Yeah, we should. We should do that.
We should. So it is my pick. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to start by giving our listeners a little homework.
Oh dear.
So listeners,
Uh-oh.
I want
Classic
you
I'm
guys,
not doing
teacher.
it.
I want you to investigate 2 terms that I think are going to be key in our discussion for the next game. I want you to look up the term slow violence. It's all one term. And I want you to also look up the term, this is the more important one of the 2, look up necropolitics.
Spell it.
It's a theory. It's necro, Necro, politics, all one word. It was advanced by, I'm going to try my best with pronouncing this name. It's announced by theorist, post-colonial theorist, Achille Mbembe. So his last name, Mbe, all one word again. Necropolitics, that's a theory he advanced. So that's a long-winded way of introducing our next game. It's going to be an older one, Oni. Third-person action game. And I think it has a lot to do with these 2 theories, slow violence and necropolitics, along with things like Orwellian dystopia, other such ideas. I think it's going to be a fruitful discussion. But do your homework. Look into it.
Outstanding. Yes, we should hopefully have a guest for that podcast as well. I won't announce it now because everything's always up in the air.
Fingers crossed. It won't be Mbembe, I can tell you that much. I don't know if he's still alive or not, but I don't think we could get him.
Yeah, probably couldn't. Thank you, Billy.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. God, what a hell of a show.
He was looking up necropolitics.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck are we getting
Safe
ourselves
search on.
into?
Safe search on.
God,
Necropolitics. Gino, politics. Not feelings.
Whatever.
Okay,
So, look, I had
okay.
fun. Thank
Good.
you. Thank you
I
for having me on
guarantee
the show.
you that Google would go, do you mean?
An unexpected 3-parter. Well deserved, though. This game took on a lot. And so, yeah, Gino had some points that it could have handled some stuff better and polished some stuff better, but I can't really fault the game that tried to be so well, Gino and Noelle both made some points, but I can't fault the game too much that was brave enough to address some of these things. Like they did a pretty damn good job with a lot of it.
And thank you, Noelle, for joining us. Thank you, special guest.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for opening me up to this whole video game stuff that you kids are into.
Damn kids.
Crazy kids.
So true.
I'm younger than all of them, by the way.
That is true. All right, till next time. Peace.